Hello, my friends. How are you today? Got a bunch of good questions. Sorry we only got to one question last week. We ended up going for like a half an hour on one question. But we got a bunch of good ones today. We'll get John on here in a second. How you guys doing? Grab John.
What's up, man?
What's up?
How was the birthday weekend?
First off, what's going on with your face?
Oh, I shaved my beard.
I know. You look nice.
What's going on? This is funny because the first time I grew a beard, and it was like a beard when I was like, I don't know, 20 or something, or 21. I had a friend who I hadn't seen in a while who it was a bunch of us in a bar, and she walked into the bar and she walked up and she goes, "What the fuck is wrong with your face?" That's a good friend.
No, it's a shock. The change can be so shocking. That's really what it is.
Yeah.
You look good. You look good.
Decided to get that shit out of there.
The weekend was exceptional. Your message to me was really, really sweet. I had I couldn't respond doing it justice in the moment when I when I heard it. I got quite emotional. So did Niku. We were both like,
well, we'll have a proper offline catch up about it all. But it looked like
it was really nice
from Instagram. It was amazing.
I'll apologize to the audience today that I'm a bit disheveled from the weekend. There was a lot of champagne, a lot of overeating, and not as much walking as we hoped to have done based on true exhaustion.
That sounds great. So you're up in. I don't know if you want to talk about it. I'm actually just curious as a friend.
Yeah, Santa Barbara.
No,
Barbareño, best restaurant in Santa Barbara. Probably one of the best on the coast that most people don't know about.
Oh.
So we'll give them a lovely shout out to Barbareño.
Barbareño. By the way, this is now officially the quickest we've gotten into food on the 40 plus streams we've done.
This weekend was all about food, so I turned 35. Let's talk about something really exciting. Today I played tennis, and it was the first time after tennis that my back doesn't feel sore.
Amazing.
My flexibility, my mobility is highly improved from two physical therapy appointments, and I'm going back tomorrow morning, and I couldn't be more excited. There's really nothing that is exciting as this at the moment.
So are you doing a routine of stretching and strengthening things?
Honestly, like when I came over for dinner a few months back at your Malibu spot, it was not the Malibu spot. It was before Malibu. It was at your old place when we did the running.
Yeah.
And you saw how unflexible I was. And you said, look, if you do stretches 2 times a day, every day, you will become more flexible. Now, you were mostly accurate, except for I have extreme pelvic block. Like I have joint block that needed to be literally hammered out. So the dude was in me with a hammer. And now, I've never moved my joints like I'm moving them. It's actually kind of insane. Like even football when I was in high school or middle school, I couldn't move like this. So mixed with stretching every day, I can almost touch my toes, and it feels good. It's not even, there's no pain. It just feels good.
So are you gonna quit mixing and do something physical professionally now?
I was thinking about that as a topic of discussion today. Funny you bring that up.
Let's go.
Niku, shout out Glenn from Glendale. Glenn Gomez in Glendale is changing my life at the moment at Select Physical Therapy. So shout out to all the people changing lives right now, Barbareño and Glenn.
Great.
But yeah, I was actually going to talk about that. I know you just started your live off by saying that we didn't hit any questions last week. But
we'll get to them. I'll curate it when we need to.
Yeah. But my thought today was what if we just stopped? What if we just stopped for a time being, right? So, for example, artists do that. Artists stop. They do an album cycle. They tour on the album. And then they stop and they travel the world and they get inspiration and then they come back, right? Like this Silk City thing, right? Like the Anderson .Paak Bruno Mars thing is fucking insane.
The D-Mile thing.
D-Mile thing. Yeah, let's be real.
Ridiculous.
Shout out D-Mile. That's ridiculous music.
Yeah.
That is the best, my opinion, obviously, the best music that has hit the mainstream in a decade.
That's high praise. I wasn't going to go that far, but that's
no. From a sense of the right kind of perfection and in simplicity, the vocal performance when he hits that falsetto and the way it hits the reverb and the tail of the verb and the detail and the way that
perfect execution.
It's perfect execution of a thing. So that's what I mean. I don't think that's the best piece of music that's came out, but I should specify. Thank you. To me, it's the best execution of a fully realized vision. It felt labored over and loved over.
And very complete.
Very complete. There's not it just makes you want to listen again because there's so many details. So anyway, I imagined that we haven't heard from him in a while. We've heard from Anderson. We haven't heard from Bruno. I'm imagining him contemplating what's next. He's
after
so
you
much
have
success.
diamond singles and you're just on top of the world. What do you do?
I imagine he's stopped, right?
Yeah.
And I know people that have stopped for a time being. And engineers, producers, we're such work for hires. We are artists in some degree, but it's not really our thing. What if we just stopped and did something else for 3 months, right? I've thought, my example, and then I want to hear your thoughts, is I've thought about moving to Paris for 3 months for a summer to go to Le Cordon Bleu for a chef school. Not because I want to become a chef at a restaurant. I have no interest in that, but I would love to get training, and it's an excuse to go do something else somewhere else for an extended period of time, while also, for being an ambitious motherfucker, you feel like you're accomplishing something. There's something to attain, and you're not sitting still the entire time. So the idea of stopping is something I wanted to talk to you about today.
Well, so I think that's a combination of two things that are really good topics, just philosophically. One is something we've talked about a lot, which is breaks, and that is a form of that. I'm at a deeper level than break. Exactly. Yeah. So this is break, but this is 3-month psychological shift. Get out of what you've been doing. Go focus on something else. Go be passionate about something else. Go be in a different country. Go be in a different social circle. Go, have different inputs for an extended period. They talk about there's all these different pieces of research about this, but 3 months, a season, is about the amount of time to really build a habit or break a habit or something like that. So if you actually I've never taken 3 months off from making music. I don't know what that would be like. That seems interesting. It's not something I want to do right now, but I understand for you that kind of impulse is there.
I actually did involuntarily when I broke my chest in the Uber accident 2 years ago. I was on the couch for 2.5 months, just shy of 3, and actually couldn't. That was different. No, I watched the entirety of Downton Abbey instead. It was very ambitious.
Very ambitious. Well, if you do it by choice, I imagine that, that would be a different thing. But
it's different.
So the idea of breaks, we talk about breaks from the micro of take a 10-minute break every 50 minutes just to clear your head, do a push-up, do something physical to come back to your mix or your production or whatever, or your songwriting session. The amount of as actually, as an aside, it's one of the things that's so tough about Zoom sessions. It's one thing in all these songwriting sessions that are being done over Zoom. It's one thing to have the delay and not be able to sing along, and internet connection. That's obviously very tough. But the other thing that I've found is really tough is you don't get to go take a break and eat with people.
Exactly.
The meal or the coffee or the drink or whatever in the middle of a session, the amount of songs that have been written on the walking back to the studio from food, or as you're getting back into it, you're like, things just come to you because you've taken that psychological break. You've bonded with people and then coming back. So the micro 2, taking weeks off, or like you said, even multiple months, I think is an amazing idea.
Think about the longevity of a career, right? Let's think about it from that perspective. We've both been doing it for 15 plus years, right? And in that 15 plus years, we're just trugging along, and we're in the trenches, and we just keep going till we're 60, 70. How does that? I don't actually, when I actually bring it up and think about it this morning on the way back from tennis, how do you actually sustain creativity if you don't take breaks? And I think that's what separates the work for hire kind of engineer or producer mentality to no, people are coming to me because I bring something. Yeah. And I want to know where's that line? What does stopping mean? And again, it's fuel, that conversation mid-session, that bonding, that finding out about someone's hardships that brings out the second verse of the song or rewrites the chorus is when those moments happen. I imagine you can kind of have them on Zoom, but definitely not the same way.
It's much more difficult.
But what if you just had those conversations with people not working, so then when you went back to work?
Yeah, so I think it's something that I talk about a lot with young songwriters, where a lot of people, when they get some excitement, especially top liners, people that are writing lyrics and melody, get signed to a publishing deal, and then they're doing a session every day or sometimes 2 a days, especially with the Zoom era. And if you're writing things from your heart, you will run out of things to write about. You will write the same song over and over. And one of the big things that people talk about in the songwriting community is you need to go live some life so you have some things to write about. But I think that also applies to engineers. It applies to everybody.
Yes. It applies to everybody. It's just not in the common vernacular.
Yes.
When
you need
discussing.
Space. You need space for your brain and your heart and your socializing, and you need new experiences to inform. You need breaks from things to appreciate what you've been doing. You need all that kind of stuff. And then the other thing I was going to say is, those of us that are in the position where we could take a month or 2 off or 3 off is an incredible luxury that most people don't have.
Sure.
But I also think it's, there's I've referenced this a couple times recently. There's this scene from Good Will Hunting, a movie that I absolutely love.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a while. I love that movie.
Ben Affleck and Matt Damon are doing construction, and Ben Affleck asks the genius Matt Damon character, so what happened with all those jobs? And he's like, I'm not going to take any of those jobs. I don't want to do long division for the rest of my life. I'm going to be here with you, and we'll raise our kids. And he's like, and Ben Affleck gets very serious with him and says, what the fuck are you talking about? You have something. And the guy's like, Matt's like, don't give me that. Like, I have some genius. Like, he goes, nah, man, it's an insult to everybody here. Any one of these guys would kill for what you have. Yeah. You need to go take advantage of it. And not saying that you and I are geniuses or whatever, but like this idea that we're in this position where we should be going and taking those experiences and doing them and trying them. And if you have the luxury to be able to take a few months off and go learn something else incredible, go fucking take it. If you have that opportunity, I think absolutely. It'd be amazing. I mean, by the way, if you go to Paris for 3 months, just make sure you get a place with a guest room. I'll come visit you. Because that's, pre-pandemic, I probably take 6 or 8 weeks off total out of the year to just do whatever I want. And a lot of it's in Paris or traveling or whatever. I mean, I go to Fashion Week in Paris in the fall, basically every year with my brother, with a few other friends, for no other reason other than it's just fun. And I'm around different kinds of creative people. And it's around when this art fair called Frieze happens in London. So it's like fashion and art and different language and different food, and it just clears my brain and allows me to make better records. I think it's a hugely important thing.
It doesn't seem to come up much in conversation of how did you write that song? Oh, I started it and I braked for 3 months and came back and it spoke to me. That's just not part of it. It's always like, well, so-and-so came up with the guitar chords and then I had a drum loop and I put the loop in. It's like, okay, that's every song. Like,
one of my favorite stories, and it may be apocryphal, it may be actually real, is an aging Picasso was in a restaurant, and there was something where man, I can't even remember what the circumstances. I think he made a doodle or something, and it, asked for some crazy amount of money for it. And the woman was like, but it took you 30 seconds to draw that. And he goes, no, madam, it took me 60 years.
Yes, exactly.
It's this idea that it's much easier and much more fun to tell the story of the songs that were written in 20 minutes or 30 minutes, which, by the way, is true in that the essential parts of something often get created very quickly. There's emotional moments, but you need all of the lead up and all the bad songs and all the life experience and all the breaks and all the failures and all those things to lead up to those moments. I mean, some of the biggest songs I've been a part of were like, the fourth idea on the second day. And though it happened in 20 minutes, it's still all this stuff led up to it. You have to take breaks, you have to take shots, you have to do all that stuff to be able to tap into something like that. So I like I said, get a guest room and I'll come visit you.
I've thought about it for almost a decade now. I'm sure I'll do it at some point. I don't know when the right time is. Like, I don't necessarily, I bring this up just to talk to you about it because it feels like something that should be discussed, and it hasn't been. I don't feel like I'm ready to stop right now. I feel like I'm just just turned 35. I feel like I'm actually just getting started. and I've been doing it for so long. So I don't feel like it's that time yet, but I want to be aware of when that time is. And I want to know it's a possible thing to have that time, right? No one's told me that's a thing that we need to do. And I think that it's a thing that people should think that's a possibility for them to do. And I apologize to you and our audience for not mentioning my my obvious privilege in the matter here and there. That's I don't necessarily think that I could afford to just stop for like 3 months. I mean, I guess I could, but I'm actually not at that place where it's just like, oh, whatever, I can do nothing for 3 months. I have a team to support and bills and all the things that everyone else has. I could downsize my lifestyle in order to do that. And that's another way to think about it where, we're privileged enough to be able to stop. I'm not. I'd have to change things about my lifestyle. And other people are probably in a similar place where they're month to month. But if they didn't live outside their means and eat out every night like someone like I do, or order in or whatever, there's ways to mitigate some costs to prioritize a break or a stopping. So I don't know if privilege is necessarily like the way to come at it, but of course there are people that just can't do it. I mean, newborn baby and diapers are expensive and doctor's visits and all this.
Yeah, more what I was saying is that if you have the ability to do, it's like I remember. And I'm gonna fuck up the story, so forgive me. There was actually I won't even try to name it. There was a big producer that when Yeezus came out, a big producer tweeted, as an artist I think, or producer or both, tweeted, yeah, the production's a 10, but if I had $2 million, I could make something like that too. And then someone else responded, yeah, that's what we want the Kanyes of the world to be doing. We want Kanye to spend $2 million making the craziest production. Like he has the ability to do that. Go do that shit. I think.
And also, no. No.
What do you mean?
And also, no, the $2 million didn't make the record.
No, of course. No, it was a terrible criticism.
This is that's not even anything that makes any sense.
But the point being that, like take advantage of the things that you have. I think it's great. I mean, I think everybody should figure out how to take breaks in order to inform what they do.
I love that. I just got to go in on that for like 4 seconds, maybe 40 seconds. You spend $100,000 on an orchestra for a film and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Yeah. Right. Like you spend the money doesn't make the record. The choices that are made.
I really want to name because I think I do know who, but anyway, yeah.
No, it's just a ridiculous concept, and I love hearing stories like this, and then people that come at it from that angle versus, well, who cares what it costs? Yeah, that's what we want Kanye to do, but Kanye's money didn't make the production value amazing. Kanye's relationships with the people that he brought in maybe paid for their flights and spent the money on the hotel and the perspective and the point of view and the food that was there and all the ways he curated the record making. That takes money, but he can also do that in the Hollywood Hills in a house that's sick and not spend $2 million. It's the people involved that make these records, and the person that sculpts the final product, which is a lot of the times him, right? Like that's what I want in. It doesn't matter that I spend $100,000 on an orchestra. We're not using it. It doesn't fit the vibe anymore. We're just flipping that beat again. That's what makes the record, not the finances.
Absolutely. This actually might be a nice transition into one of the questions that I got versions of last week on the Discord. I'm trying to prioritize some of the discussions happened on the Discord, which has been amazing. Cool. We'll get you on there soon. It's a great discussion, great little community that's happening over there. One of the questions that a few people on the Discord wanted us to talk about was full album projects. Now, there's a lot of ways to go with that. From I'm talking to a few other people, doing some other lives with some producers and people that can speak more to that side of it. Although I know obviously you are a producer as well and have been a producer, but talking about full album projects, especially these days when so much stuff is remote and there's different producers and things are recorded at different times. Do you want to just kind of riff on how you think about, because you've obviously you worked on a full album with Khalid and he has his guy and his vocal producer Dennis, who you co-mix with.
We co-mix the album,
but it's a lot of different producers. How do you think about that stuff from the mixing side, and then maybe I can speak on it from.
Yeah, I mean, just did it with Zayn's album, also with Dennis, kind of same team. Actually, some similar producers. Sometimes I don't even know who's actually producing, which is lame. Maybe like for this example, you know, Zayn was in control of it. With his assistant, and you know, he's going to send the mix out to producers if he chooses to, or however certain artists want to work. That's not
so
really
he's in control of it.
Yeah, he for that album, he was mostly in control of the communication of like what he liked or what he didn't like. But I mean, look, this is like a pre-COVID and during COVID conversation.
Yeah.
During COVID, when we did that Khalid Free Spirit album, the producers came through the studio and we worked together. John Hill came over, Scribs came through, like people came through. Digi was on so many, Charlie Handsome, like these guys just came through. We ate food, we hung out. Khalid came through, listened multiple times. Like that's the ideal circumstance. The ideal circumstance in a full album is when you can communicate, you can be in the same room, not the entirety of the time. There's a lot of cooking that happens before the guests arrive. And that's why I love Brazes, right? Like I love that you show up and it already smells good, right? So psychologically, you're already like, this is going to be tight. If you're starting from the beginning with everyone in the room, I don't necessarily, granted, this is my mix perspective.
Yeah.
I can also agree with a lot of what I'm saying for production, for certain types of personalities. Certain personalities cook up better with people in the room. Certain personalities cook up better without other people in the room. I cook up with people not in the room.
Yep.
Better. And I think that figure out which one you are. But when it comes to whole albums, ideally you want it to feel cohesive, right?
Yeah. So that's the question: is how do you go about doing that? What are the processes you like to go through, or you see other people go through that are valuable?
Well, I and on the, if we're talking about that album process with Dennis, like we have a certain R&B aesthetic, right? We have a certain pop R&B aesthetic that like hits home with us. So we are already, Dennis and I already aligned on what that should sound
taste.
like.
You guys have
taste.
aligned taste and influence and language. So even though you guys are doing different parts of the project or parts of the process and some overlap, there's sort of an agreed upon taste between the people who are decision makers in the process.
And say there's 5 different producers on different records. Well, who's producing most of it, right? So for that record, like Digi and Charlie Handsome, like did a lot of it. John Hill had like 4 or 5 songs. So like I'm gonna lean on the aesthetic of the majority of the records and then bring other ones to that, right? So when Talk came about and it came from Disclosure, well, it's too EDM sounding in their mix, too dancey. Like, how do we make it more R&B, right? We've talked about that in the previous episode. It's like, well, now it needs to sit in R&B land. I don't want the single to just be the single and everything else sound like a completely different record. Same thing with like John Hill songs were a bit more like Tame Impala and over compressed and didn't fit the R&B vibe. But then when he came over to listen, he was like, oh, I love how you kind of relax things and made it more R&B. And it fit the narrative of Khalid's sonic vision, lyrical vision, a bit more relaxed, more introspective, and less slammed and you know, non-intimate, right? Like I want it to be more conversational. So these are conversations that we have, but also going back to taste, I didn't have to say those words. You know, John said it when he heard the perspective. Like people at a certain level, they'll understand intention, but then they'll say they like it or don't like it, right? They'll mention that they get what you were going for. Right. But, you know, for example, I'm doing another project and Ricky Reed's producing, and he was like, yo, love what you did on this record. I was hoping you would take this record a bit more that direction on the second song he gave me. And I was thinking, oh shit, like I heard the song for the song because I'm not even in album mode because I thought I was only doing 1 on this album. Turns out I got 5 records on the album. Now I'm considering how they're sitting next to each other. And I wasn't because I thought I was only mixing 1. And someone else was was the mixer on the rest of the album. So that's, again, like a more real life example of I'm doing that right now, where I thought of it as everything was a single because I'm not doing the whole album where I didn't think I was doing. And now that I am, now I'm thinking like, okay, how does this one fit? Okay, this one's quieter. This one is warmer. Well, maybe I should make this bright one more in that land. And if he said he liked the crispiness of the low end and the crunchiness of the low end right now, maybe I should do that on a softer record and bring that energy. And that's what he said on the second one. It's like, can you do more of that low end crunch thing that you did that fit more? So I want to be thinking that way. I think all mixers kind of want to be thinking that way. I like whole album projects. I actually like them more than singles. Hopefully one of the songs is a successful single on the album that you mixed as a whole. I think I come from just that cross point in the industry when albums were still being made, and people's visions were trying to be seen or heard throughout a whole body of work. And I was there and made some of those. I don't. I miss it. And I don't do that many a year. I'm usually on records with like 4 to 6 songs. And then I might do like 3 whole albums a year and a lot of one-offs, like hundreds of one-offs and like a couple albums.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the words you said a number of times, which I think is key in this, is vision. There's got to be someone in the process or a couple of people that trust each other that have the vision for what things are supposed to sound like. And whether they explicitly communicate that and use the language or not, as the mixer, someone who's coming in later in the process, a big part of your job is to understand what the vision is and help them achieve it. I think that from a writer and producer perspective, especially these days where you have albums that are, like you said, different writers, different producers, there's got to be some cohesive vision from the beginning. And there's a lot of albums, and Kian said this on the chat they were talking about, where there's a lot of albums that are just kind of collections of singles. There are albums that aren't really albums. It's just we're going to get a bunch of songs together. And, good or bad, it's sort of a different thing. I would actually be curious to be in the mind of like like if I were 15 today, how would I think about albums? Would I care about albums? But you still invest in an artist. So an artist can't just put out one song. You don't get the same out of an artist that you love who just has one song out versus if they have 10 out. And presumably there's something about that artist. Well, I'm saying there's something about that. If you like an artist and they have 10 songs out, there's got to be something rather than just liking the songs. If you like the artist, then there's something that they're doing that's leading the vision, that's leading the personality, whether it's a vocal sound or just an attitude or a lyrical aesthetic, or it connects to videos a certain way or whatever. There is something about the artist that has to be, and the voice that has to be cohesive if you're going to do what we're talking about.
I don't remember the last time someone said, yo, did you check out that album? Besides Phoebe Bridgers.
Yeah.
Or an album that was made 10 years ago.
Yeah. That's very interesting.
It's not in the vocabulary these days. Did you hear that record? Did you hear that new artist featured on this song? Did you hear this song? Did you hear that record? It's on that playlist. It's doing really well on this playlist. It's become a playlist world. And I don't know. Like I just mixed a 7-minute jam session record. Great musicians, some of the best in the world on this record. So my favorite, at least. Who's gonna fucking listen? It sounds like a jam session. It's sick. There are amazing parts. It's like funky clavichord comes in. You're like, damn, that's fucking tight. No one's going to get to 5 minutes to hear that funky clavichord enter. Well, maybe they will. Maybe they will. I'm just saying, like, that doesn't seem like the type of record or the type of world we exist in where this is happening all the time till something jumps out at you.
Yes. And it's actually an interesting point, because I think that you and I don't want to speak for you, but at least I find myself comparing the way people consume music now to, how do I say this? I think of the way that people consume music now as a single song version of the way I consume music when I was growing up. But it's actually not just that people are listening to music differently. It's that they are like song by song or something. They're consuming it through videos, through social media, it's almost a multimedia experience more often than it is, it's like the songs that blow up on TikTok, the people that are older go, oh, that song is perfect for TikTok. But people who would listen to that song don't go, okay, there is a song and it is connected. It's one experience that you're having. So
yes.
Those of us,
I don't share that experience. You're right. I'm older. Yeah.
Right. And so I think a lot of people, it's a song is a video. I don't think people would call it a campaign, but I think there's a visual element and a video element and a shareable element that is much bigger than just I only listen to people only listen to singles now. They don't listen to albums. No, it's that they listen to the music in a different context with more media and more visual on it. I actually haven't thought this through, so it's maybe coming out sort of like
it's a different way people are connecting with this medium.
People connect to the artists in a different way than we did.
If you make a song that's to dance to, then it will most likely, especially during a pandemic, connect on TikTok where people can show off their new dance move, hoping that goes viral and then skyrockets them to a chance of fame, right? So now we have this access point that offers chance of sharing in this experience that we didn't have when we had this mysterious artist to fan relationship where you didn't know that they were crying this morning or that they were ecstatic at the victory of their favorite basketball team, or whatever is like bringing people joy and melancholia these days. Like we know too much, and there's benefits of it, but there's also, we're missing that deeper mystery, that connection that we want to know more about someone because we know everything about them. So when I think about the artist, we know so much about the artist. We don't really need to know their lyrics anymore. We don't need to hear their story through lyrics. We're seeing it on Instagram. We're seeing it on TikTok. There's less of a need for that sense of connection and understanding. That's my take on it. I think
maybe. I don't know that I fully agree with that, but perhaps in the context of like a whole album's worth of songs is not how it's just a whole album's worth of songs is not the only way to connect to a musical artist anymore. There's all these other ways, and therefore it becomes less primary. Yeah,
and a single, you already it's just like a snap of the finger. You can get someone's perspective through their single and think that's the entirety of them, and now you already have a narrative of who this artist is based on what they said in the single, what their lyric is, what they stand for comes through, and it takes you less time to go deep into an artist and say, who is this person? What do they have to say? Because you actually might not agree with them on anything else, like culturally, politically, and you're a super fan of this person because of their one song. You actually don't know what this person is like. And that's how it used to be, right? There was this mystery. Now I know exactly what they stand for because they're telling us like this, like we're doing. You know what I mean? Everyone on this chat can kind of gather what we stand for. I'll speak for myself. I think people can tell that I'm passionate and enthusiastic and that I care about food and I care about cooking for people and I care about every millisecond of a song. It's easy for me to come on this screen and tell the world that, and also tell you that I couldn't stretch last week before this back treatment and I was crying because I realized how much pain I've actually been in most of my life from these accidents. But who the fuck cares that I've been crying because I have back pain? Like, it doesn't matter, but I can tell you that, and you already have one more piece of information that I don't need to tell you about in a song, that I have chronic lower back pain, right?
Yeah.
Like, not that that's the deepest thing, but you don't need to know you don't need to find out my deepest emotional insecurities through my record when I can just tell you them now.
I'm also excited for your I'm excited for your solo record too.
Yeah,
songs about this.
That might manifest itself in poetry form. I don't do the singing part, but what I'm getting at, which I think we've harped on the point enough, is that there's other ways now and quicker ways and cheaper ways. So maybe there's less finances going into full album projects. For example, getting like an album fee for a producer versus a single fee is a thing, right? There's a difference in that, and that's the vocabulary they use. this is an album cut, so it's going to be $5,000 for the production fee, and the single costs $35,000 for the production fee. You're like, okay, is it a better? Okay, you're saying it's going to make more money because it's a single. It'll pay back the producer advance. I get it, but are you saying this song isn't as good, so we're not going to put as much into it? Oh, the choir isn't going to be hired, or the orchestra's not going to be hired for the album cut. We'll use a contact library, but for the single, we'll spend the money to do this. But the record might have more success cinematically in TV and film if we put the real orchestration in and hired Rob Moose to actually do the arrangement. But we don't have a budget, so we can't. Like all these things come into play when you're talking about album projects. And this is a long-winded riff, and we didn't really answer the question. But I think that we're cutting corners on albums and the connection to artists through their albums because we're getting connection elsewhere. Yeah.
I think that's right. Yeah, the album as I only worked on albums up until, I don't know, 6-7 years ago or something, and then it's mostly one-offs. I haven't worked on as a producer and writer. Like I haven't done an album in 4 or 5 years where I've like really pretty much done the whole thing. Yeah. It's I don't know if it's actually maybe it is a relic of the past now, or it's more of a niche thing than it used to be. So in terms of how you do it, and what you were talking about as well as record company considerations and what people are willing to pay for and who's in control of the budget. And, record companies it's a very old business model that is adapting to the new world. And so there are things that they used to spend money on that they don't now. There's things that they still spend money on that they probably shouldn't from a business perspective, and how those things interrelate. I don't know.
And people are honestly, it's a positive to this would say that in times like this, it lets other people, managers and maybe more independent A&Rs, artists themselves, producers themselves, executive producers, try to innovate ways to put out records. And there might be some friction there, and there might be some bad ideas, but they're ideas nonetheless. And it's interesting that people are coming out with new ways to put out records. So I think there are a lot of positives here. I think that I miss, and we both seem to agree on this point, which is we miss the connection that albums bring to us via our favorite artists. I have to say I'm really stoked for this Anderson Bruno Mars album. I will listen to the album because they told a really awesome story in that video and that record. It's setting up, and then the clothing line drop on the cost. Like all this is, there's a campaign behind it, like you said, but there's human connection there. That's real. And, or if it's not, it's acted really well. It's a bit of what we were talking about before, which is an artist like Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak to a lesser extent have the ability to do, they have the luxury of being able to spend the money and do a full album and do the big campaign. And like we talked about, it is a multimedia campaign where it's like they release the single and the video, and I'm sure there's all kinds of marketing campaigns and there's clothing, but it's also a full album. Presumably, we haven't heard it yet, but I assume it's a mostly D-Mile and Bruno and Anderson and the one writer whose name I cannot remember that works a lot with Bruno. It's like, I'm excited because it's sort of nostalgic. I mean, it sounds that way too. It sounds like a classic album. It does. It sounds like that 70s thing. So I think that'll be cool. But you're right. It is something that is sort of unique and interesting in that way. I just think that just tying these two bits together, I don't think that, and I would love to talk if I knew Bruno or Anderson, which I don't. I would like to know how long they stopped for before they made that project. I would like to know the benefit of the stop before that creative process and what fueled it, because you can't make that if you're doing 100 other things. It's just not possible. Yeah, I totally agree. It might actually be a cool transition. There have been a few people who have asked about the Kid Laroi stuff, so I don't know if you have any little anecdote or anything you want to riff on that. But that's a thing that was an EP, and you did the whole thing, correct? Yeah, it was an EP whole thing, but it was a deluxe edition. So it was a deluxe edition that they put an EP on top of. So the album existed, and then I mixed the the entirety of the new EP that came on.
Interesting.
So it's a weird one. It was a deluxe edition though, with a new, but instead of saying deluxe, they just called it Savage, and it was 6 new songs added to that. And my homie Clint mixed the album, and then I did the added songs.
Is there anything in parallels we can draw from the previous conversation about trying to make it cohesive? Did you try to make it? Did you lean on toward the album at all? Did you make the 6 sort of stand
definitely didn't lean on the album at all.
Were they different vocals, different producers, different recordings that you had to kind of
2 different groups of producers? Okay. One a bit more hip hop oriented, and one a bit more pop oriented. The 2 songs that the ones that are kind of climbing charts and have been actually, I think, Without You. Yeah, shout out Don Rob, Kid Cutler, exactly. Don Rob kind of in there producing, vocal producing, recording, already doing his thing on making it cohesive, but coming from the 2 different producer groups that are working on the project. I think that's where I came in and kind of helped bring the glue. That's tricky because they're already, like, mad respect to them. You know, they're already like a team that they're all working together. And because of COVID and not really doing attended sessions, like, I haven't really been in the room with them like I did on the Khalid album. Like we're talking about, I wish I could be. I wish I could have them all over here. Because it's my home, it's a little bit trickier right now until like vaccines are a bit more mainstream and accessible. Yeah. Just because that, you know, rolling with a crew is different. Like I love that. I would love for them to all come over. I have the space for it. Like that's why I have this space.
Eight young dudes in the middle of COVID. Maybe.
Yeah, it's just not
ideal.
I can't. You know, I got, you know, a bubble of people that I want to come feel safe in my home and cook dinner on the podcast and all that stuff. So anyway, I think that, you know, we're doing as best of that we can. And we're all on a text thread when we were doing those records. We had to turn them all around within a week or 2. So we were on it together and like sending back and forth. Hey, like this was tight, but like I actually liked the effect on the vocal and the rough better on this one. Like, can we go back to that one? Right. And, you know, okay, actually, well, that's tight. Why don't you send me a stem of that verb that you had then separate? And Don Rob fucking fast and he's on it and super pro. So I think we could have a better relationship than we do if I'm being real. And, you know, I hope if we do more on the next project together, that can develop. But he's dope. So
did you have any sonic things that you did to treat the vocal or treat the tracks to be like, all right, this is a consistent thing that I'm gonna look for in his voice or in anything like
adding warmth. It was mostly sent to me pretty thin, which I imagine people they're listening really loud. So it makes you kind of like take out low mids and kind of get it brighter and just like loud. And I'm turning things down and kind of adding some body to him. I think he sounds more mature and more interesting, with more mid-range, more low mid, more full body. Like, you know, Justin Bieber has super air, but he's got low mids and that kind of lush thing to it. And I always like that in younger singers that have it. So as he develops in his maturity as an artist, like I'm hoping to bring that kind of connection through the full body, like the full range of what a vocal can be, because I actually think he's really special. Yeah. And I think the thinner the approach to the vocal, the less character that you actually get. And it's perceived character from that kind of upper mid-range energy that we've talked about, like that Fletcher Munson area, that 3 to 5K, that really thin, bright. I think if you leave just enough of that, control that, don't take it out, and bring up low mids, that's where the kind of the vibrato comes in, and these like other characteristics that I think set him apart from other people that are kind of in this rap sung, you know, new wave hip hop sound that's happening. And I think he's special for a reason. I think the team at Columbia that's, you know, really pushing him, like, know that he's really special and has a trajectory that is far beyond a lot of other people. And I take that responsibility really seriously. And I want to help. It's like how I imagine Paul Epworth going into an Adele mix or something. It's like, what can we bring out of this artist? Like, it's already great. It's already there. How do I do it even more? You know, like that's how the best mixers go into these potentially iconic artists. Like I'm not necessarily putting him up there with Adele at the moment. He's got a long way to go, but that's how I think about people that have that character. There's something unique about him that stands out. And what is it? And I want to bring that out. And I actually think that's lower than how they're sending it to me. I think it's in a lower part of his voice. So anyway.
Highlighting or adding harmonic content in the lower range of his voice. Richer, yeah. That's cool. Interesting.
Yeah.
Let's see. There's a couple other...
And honestly, I think like actually my girlfriend Niku pointed it out when we were listening in the car once and it came out and then it went to the rest of the record and there was a difference. There was a difference between the EP and kind of where that character was coming from that made him sound like a star. And the records before, he sounded really good. Like they sound good, but there's a bit more compression and a bit more just something more in the way of connecting to that character, that richness that I think he needs and he embodies. It's there.
Yeah, that's great. I like this question from Yannick. What makes a mix translate on different speakers, especially crappy ones? We've talked about these sort of things before, but what do you know? I'll say real quick. One of the things that, and I know what one of your answers is going to be, but I'll say it for you because I sent you a text. It was early on when we became friends. I was listening, and I've said this on a stream before. I was listening to like a pop playlist off of an iPhone with a friend of mine. And one of the Khalid records came on and it sounded like louder and clearer. And I texted you about it and you said Transients.
Yeah.
Transients were the thing that separated. And there's probably other things you can talk about. But Transients is a big one.
The balance between the balances, number one, let's just answer it easily. Balances help translation. Good gain structure. We've talked about that in earlier episodes. Balances between instruments, not too much and not too little of anything. So I love low end, but you can't just only have low end for it to translate everywhere else. You have to have the balances, and balances of instruments and balances of frequencies. Those are different things in my brain. And transients translate. And when you're in I always go back to one of my favorite restaurants is in downtown LA called Little Sister. It's a Southeast Asian, Indonesian food restaurant. It's fucking unreal, first of all. Back to food references.
Yes, indeed.
And when you go there, they're only playing 90s hip hop or trap music. And you hear hi-hats and you hear vocal. Those are the things that have the most transients in that style of mix. Can barely hear the kick. You can feel the 808, but it's hi-hats and it's vocals. And that's not enough for a song. You can't judge the song by the hi-hat. It's just there's not enough differences in patterns to call a hi-hat iconic. Nobody says the hi-hat is iconic.
That's interesting.
I have one iconic hi-hat, and it's in the Barack Obama special on a Boz record that Mixba Ali mixed. There's this crazy delay. I don't know who did it. I think I asked... I don't want to speculate actually who did it, but anyway, iconic hi-hat. Like if you heard it, it's just like pitched down, filtered, delayed to the left and the dry one on the right, and like never heard anything like it. It's so cool. Other than that, the hi-hat never makes the song. The hi-hat can break the song. It never makes the song. So I want that effect. I want that transient effect to come through. So let's let it be on the acoustic guitar. For example, the song Without You, this Kid Laroi record, Blake, who produced it, his like first thing when he FaceTimed me back with excitement about the mix was like, how did you make a no drum record have that much transient energy? And I was like, well, I took all the compression off your acoustic guitar and I clip gained it, I saturated, I added transients, and the acoustic is doing the hi-hat. The acoustic guitar is driving the rhythm. OG hi-hat, like, I don't know, the acoustic guitar, there are Bob Dylan records that have so much energy and transients that came from his acoustic guitar. Like, we all know Bob Dylan has no transients in his vocals. So, like, it's coming from the guitar. Like, it can come from all these other places. So just using that philosophy, like, where are the transients coming from? It's translating in the restaurant over through hi-hats, but I want something that's more musical and iconic to come through with those transients. So that's what I think.
That's a great answer. And there's a couple of people asking questions. I encourage all of you guys to come on the Discord and ask questions. You've got a community of people there that can point you to the right when we talk about certain kinds of saturation or vocal character enhancements. We've talked about a lot of this stuff, and folks on the Discord will be able to help you do that. You've paused for a second, but I can still hear you.
Yeah, you're paused too, but we'll just keep going.
We'll just keep it moving. That's interesting. The other thing that I was curious about, or I wanted to mention and see what your thoughts are. A lot of times, people will mix things that sound great on speakers with low end, and then when you remove the low end, you've removed all of the low end elements in a song. Like if you listen through speakers that don't have a lot of low end, you've lost a lot of that, and a lot of that comes down to making sure you have upper harmonic information in some of your low end things. So whether it's 808s or bass or whatever, I don't know if you could speak on that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I still want an 808 to move the floor in the car. So we've talked about this. Like I don't really filter very high. Like other mixers tout that they like filter up to 30, and that's how they get their low end. I don't do that. I keep it all the way down as much as possible. Yeah. But I'll carve other areas to clean it up. You need upper harmonics, you need the right amount, but with too much upper harmonics, you don't get the sub hitting your feet in the floor. Like you gotta find the right balance there. I think about small devices. I listen to every mix on AirPods before I send out. I care a lot about that, but I also think that when you have good monitoring, if you hear everything on the good monitors in a good room, you're going to hear it other places. So I don't actually, this is the only way I can talk about it. I actually don't think about it. I'm at a point in my practice that I don't think about, will it translate on small devices? If things didn't translate on small devices, I wouldn't get hired. And I keep getting hired, so I know that it's translating on small devices. But are there tips and tricks on how to do it? Sure, we've probably talked about it in other episodes, but that's a necessity. That's not an option. Like it has to translate.
I think for people starting out and learning, the best is just listen off your phone. And one of the things that you said, which changes, a lot of people are using audio movers to stream things, they stream mixes, do Zoom sessions, whatever.
If I'm second guessing myself, if I can hear the 808 on a phone, I just stream it right away before I bounce it and I check it. I'll do some moves with it on the phone, but it's rare that I have to do that because 808s that are sent to mixers at this point, the producers are good. Yeah, pick the right 808. It's got upper harmonics. Don't take them out. You know what I mean? Like there's just. Do less. When in doubt, do less. Don't. I don't want to say don'ts, but I think that people should err on the side of not splitting 808s and doing parallel things where phasing is induced to get upper harmonics. Use EQ and saturation overall to if you're missing upper harmonics. Phasing and low end and splitting things
gets dangerous.
It gets dangerous, and I think you'll lose things on smaller devices more easily than you'll gain.
It's deceptive too. It's you when I actually did that on a track last night and was just playing with phase for like 15 minutes because I did the same thing. I split the 808. I wanted to add a little more juice in the chorus so it speaks a little more in that sort of like 200 to 300 range, and it was like this just doesn't quite sound right. The low end feels a little squirrely, and I started flipping phase on kicks. I was like, no, fuck all this.
Pick a better kick.
And well, what I did is I just used Spectre, and that thing was great. That thing is powerful. I just started using that in the last couple of weeks. It's like a few dB of that is a crazy amount of extra information.
Yeah, if I'm over 1 or 2 dB on something, that's a big intense boost on that thing.
You can do cool sound design stuff too with like you boost up 20 hertz and it does weird things. It's pretty cool. Spectre's great.
We've talked about this again in earlier episodes, but cutting areas with an EQ and then even boosting the same thing with that more broad does a wild thing too, and that's phase shifting. The boost post cut is a move. So anyway, this is too geeky for me for the moment. But yeah, like Cutler just said, the Splice 808 has already been decapitated. Like I don't know. It's like you're listening to a podcast and it's about investing and they have to have a preface and that says, I am not giving you financial
This is not
advice
investment advice.
This is not investment advice or medical advice. Like, talk to your doctor before you start taking magnesium before you go to bed. Right. But I don't want to be prescriptive with ideas on what you should and shouldn't do. But I think that there's a world that we can all live in as mix engineers where there is no such thing as parallel processing. And we might have cleaner, more translatable records.
Yeah, and there are just, as we've talked about before, and by the way, this might be an interesting transition. There was somebody that suggested in the DMs, and there's other people that says we should do a whole episode or maybe two on compression as a concept.
Do we have to?
Well, yes, we do, because I think it would be.
I love you.
It would be super interesting, because we'd go from it not about compressors but about the concept of dynamics, and cool. I think it'd be very interesting. But the reason I said that, one is I think we should do it, but two, there are so many more tools than there were 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. So many more tools to add saturation, to compress dynamic range, to do all these things without just using like the replication of the 1176. There's just so many interesting tools that you and I have talked about a lot. Where our whole episode on saturation and harmonics early on, we've talked about it a lot. But boy, are there so many cool tools that you don't have to use some of those old school techniques, which do fuck with phase. I mean, they all have compromises to them: parallel compression, doing lots of EQ, these sort of things. Will definitely mess up the clarity of your mix if you're not careful.
And again, it's doing it without proper monitoring. It's doing it where you really can't hear, where you're like, oh, that benefit. Oh, but I can't tell. I'll leave it because it must be doing a thing because so-and-so does it. Spike Stent does this, so I should do it. It's like, Spike Stent has been doing it for 30 years.
He knows what he's hearing.
He's also muted the thing that he tried. He's also realized it didn't work. He's a master. I just, proceed with caution. Ask your doctor first before.
Your mileage may vary. So YMMV is my favorite internet.
That's hilarious.
Your mileage may vary. We've got a couple other questions that I think would be longer to answer.
Yeah.
We're already at about an hour, so I think we'd probably call it here.
Yeah, I think that was good.
But yeah, it's great talking to you. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you. I'm going to go make a soft scramble.
Yeah, and let's catch up in the next day or two offline and tell me more things.
Thanks, Matt.
And I'm going to be on the Discord after, so you guys come over there and ask questions. Any of you guys that were asking questions on the chat, there's a whole community of people that can point you in the right direction. I will be there as well.
Sick. I love you doing that.
Yeah, it's cool, man. It's really nice. There's almost 200 people over there on the Discord, and it's been really dope. People are really helping each other out and collab, and it's very cool. Love you, John. Always great to see you.
Yeah.
Peace, guys.